Okay. All right. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shuchi Nagpal, CEO, Asian School of Cyber Laws, and we are going to be discussing blockchain for NextGen Lawyers with Rohas. Hi, Rohas. Rohas is currently the Chief Blockchain Architect with Wrapped Asset Project. Rohas, shall we start out?
Sure. So let me start with a very basic introduction to what blockchain technology really means. Okay. And then, of course, we'll go deeper into it. Is why does it really make a difference to a lawyer, whether he knows this or not? Correct. So when we use the word blockchain, right, conceptually, it is a shared ledger. And different entities would have addresses on this ledger, kind of like you have a bank account.
Yeah.
And this would be on a ledger. But the major difference is going to be that everybody in the world can see all transactions, which is very unlike what happens, say, in the banking sector. So today, let's take an example of, all of us use online banking. So there are different banks. Each of us has accounts in different banks.
Yes.
And whatever transactions are happening in my account in a particular bank, only that bank can see the transactions.
Correct.
So if I'm using Axis Bank, they can see my transactions. If I use ICICI, they can see my transactions.
Very true.
If I also have accounts in two different banks, I cannot log into one place and see both. I will individually log into these two places. So in a pre-blockchain world, money was always in private databases, say, of banks. But when blockchain came into the picture with Bitcoin, what it started to do was, for the first time now, we have a shared ledger where everybody in the world can see everybody else's transactions. However, people can't see your name or photograph there. They can just see an address. And unless they know who that address belongs to, they don't know the actual entity doing the transactions. And then again, what the Bitcoin blockchain brought in was a very unique innovation, where using a combination of technologies, all of which existed for many years before Bitcoin came, but by using those combination in a very innovative fashion, it made it possible that no single entity in the world needs to regulate this blockchain. So like today, you need banks who regulate their own databases, and then you have a central bank which regulates all the banks. And that's how the money system works. But in the blockchain, anybody in the world could set up a node with zero permissions required. And a node could be set up on an average computer. And they could become part of the global community running the blockchain. So as long as one single person in the world is left who is running even one node of a blockchain, the blockchain runs. And as more and more people join it, all the data gets automatically replicated across those nodes. And the blockchain just keeps to function. And now when you make transactions, you again don't need a bank to tell you what you can and cannot do. There is no concept of holidays here. Like, you have bank holidays. So on those days, you can't really transact. When you try to move money globally, it takes a lot of time because there are so many entities which come in. But on the blockchain, anybody can sign transactions, move money from their account to someone else's within a very small period of time, which could range from seconds to minutes, but without needing permission. I can just sign my own transactions.
Okay. So, but Rohas, first things first. Okay, this is still a little bit complicated. Now, my question is, can you bring it down to absolute base level? Why should I use a blockchain-based transaction where it's going to be like forever and there's proof and all of that? And why shouldn't I just, continue doing what I've been doing all these years?
Sure. So now that's a very tough question to answer because it would depend upon who you are and what you're trying to do. So what I'd like to say is when the blockchain world started, we had just Bitcoin. Now it's grown and today there are more than 6,000 actively traded cryptocurrencies or crypto assets. And these are traded across 400 plus exchanges globally, and the total market cap has grown to over $2 trillion.
Wow.
Right. So the entire crypto asset space has become so big. I mean, it's almost equal to the GDP of India. And in the future, it's expected to go up so much more. So it has become essential for everyone, especially in the legal field, to understand, because the blockchain brings in a lot of very new things for lawyers also. So let's take a simple example that today, there's a concept called banking law, right? And there's a whole bunch of agreements and contracts and compliances that you do as part of banking law. Well, in the future, a lot of what is today called banking is going to look completely different. Secondly, a lot of banks are getting into the field of blockchain also, and they're using blockchain to leverage and build better solutions. So you're going to need completely new compliance systems, completely new legal agreements coming into the picture. Because a crypto asset, which basically is something which runs on a blockchain, is so fundamentally different as compared to conventional assets that a lawyer really needs to understand the nuances before they are able to actually make proper legal documentation for it.
Okay, so Rohas, what I meant to ask was, I've sort of heard you explain this before, but I want you to do it for all of us once again. If I were to lend money to a friend of mine, right? How is that transaction any different from any transaction on a blockchain?
Okay, so what happens is, let's take a very basic example. You lend someone money. Now the point is, tomorrow they say you didn't give me the money. Now, how do you prove that they actually borrowed the money from you, if it is especially in cash? Now imagine if when you were giving the money, 10 people took photographs and posted it on their relevant social media. So somebody took a video, put it on Facebook, somebody took a picture, put it on Insta. Now, if your friend wants to deny the transaction, he or she would need to go to all these different platforms and delete all those. Similarly, when a transaction gets put on the blockchain, it immediately goes to all the nodes. So for someone to now tamper that with that transaction, they will need to simultaneously hack into all these nodes.
Wow.
And that is next to impossible. So that is what gives blockchain a very unique edge, and which is why people are beginning to say that, yeah, it's immutable, which means you can prove in a court of law that this transaction was not tampered with.
Wow.
So that becomes even more solid evidence in a court of law, which is going to make changes to evidentiary value.
Correct.
Then those transactions are automatically digitally signed. Now, many countries around the world, including India, legally recognize digital signatures. By default, every single blockchain transaction is digitally signed. But there are two kinds of keys. One is called custodial, one is non-custodial. So when you open an account with a crypto exchange, they maintain your private key. But when you open a crypto wallet, you maintain your private key. So again, from a legal point of view, it becomes very different. When I maintain my key and sign, the evidentiary value is different. When a crypto exchange has my keys and they sign, then that's a whole different story.
Very true.
Yeah. So these are a lot of nuances that come in when we talk about blockchain law.
In the field of law enforcement, can you clarify? So, for example, who are the people who may? I mean, I'm saying it's a very broad field, and a lot of different people at different levels. Who are the people who would actually need to learn about blockchains?
Sure. So when we talk about it, so one is if you look at law enforcement, so a lot of crime which is happening today involves the use of cryptocurrencies and crypto assets. See, remember, crime always follows money. Wherever money goes, crime will follow. So initially we used to live in a world of cash. Banks used to maintain physical ledgers. So people used to rob by breaking into banks and physically stealing cash.
Stealing money, correct.
Then banks started moving online, electronic, so people started doing more hacking.
Okay.
Now that crypto itself has become so huge. In fact, Bitcoin individually is bigger than the biggest bank in the world today in terms of market cap. So a lot of the criminals have moved on to the blockchain world. So naturally, whenever there are crimes there, those could be of two types: a crypto crime or a conventional crime using crypto as a medium of exchange.
Okay.
So again, they require the police, the judiciary, the prosecutors, the defense attorneys. Everybody needs to understand. Then only they can present the proper evidence and then prosecute or defend cases. And then only a judge will be able to pass proper judgment. So the entire ecosystem needs to understand how blockchain and cryptos work.
Oh, wow. I've also, I mean, I'm not so sure whether this is right or not, but when blockchains began, there was this whole thing about, it's such a fantastic technology that it can actually solve world hunger and all of that sort of thing. Well, I'm not really falling for that one, but can you tell us more about what use cases actually do go onto the blockchain?
Sure. So obviously the most important use case is crypto, where it's $2.6 trillion and more. Then other than that, there are a lot of non-crypto use cases that are also coming up. So government of India is one of the few countries in the world that actually comes out with a blockchain national strategy for the country.
Okay.
And in this report, which they came out with a few days ago, they've listed about 40 plus use cases of blockchain, which could include land records. It could include a government crypto wallet. They've actually mentioned all these.
Okay.
Supply chain is beginning to use that in a very big way in the industry. Gaming industry is using it. The whole concept of NFTs coming in, Metaverse coming in. So it's like, then digital identity is another thing. Of course, the cases are huge. I can't list all of them, but in even non-financial use cases are also beginning to really grow around blockchain. So naturally, a lawyer in this field would also need to understand what are the use cases relevant to his industry, where he needs to have some kind, sorry, I keep saying he, I mean he, she. They need to understand, they need to have domain expertise. So suppose you are trying to work on a case which involves blockchain for supply chain. So first you need to understand how supply chain works, then how blockchain works, and then you are able to understand the combination of the two and do the proper legal consulting for that.
Am I right in understanding that at its most fundamental, blockchains relate to finance?
Well, yeah, that's a very good point. So blockchains were invented for financial use cases, which is why I also believe that smart asset lifecycle management is the core case of a blockchain, where anything could be a smart asset. It could be a piece of real estate, it could be a share of a company, it could be debt, it could be money, gold, oil, anything. And the blockchain can then manage that in a trustless manner, which means you don't need to trust people, you just trust the technology. However, as blockchains have expanded, certain non-financial use cases are also being relevant. Like supply chain does make some sense. Distributed digital identities, they do make some sense. But in my personal opinion, if you try to put too much data into the blockchain, it fails. Because the blockchain is not supposed to be used for massive data. For that, you use conventional databases and other methods, not really the blockchain.
So it's not really replacing those, only a part of them.
Yeah, it's creating a whole new ecosystem. We've never had smart assets managing themselves in the past till blockchain came into the picture. And that's why it's created this multi-trillion-dollar, completely new ecosystem.
Awesome. Something else. So the other buzzword these days is the metaverse. Is that in any way connected to blockchains?
Okay, so the metaverse is kind of like if you watch the movie Avatar, right? And there you see people looking normal like humans, and then they become big and blue, and they are in this Pandora, right? So consider Pandora to be the metaverse. So today you have metaverses where you can create a digital avatar of yourself, and it's like a 3D. So right now we are on Zoom. So it's a 2-dimensional approach. But in a metaverse, we would all be in a 3-dimensional place, and all of us are interacting with digital avatars of each other. Now, metaverse doesn't need blockchain.
Okay.
It can exist in any normal, that's where the AR, VR kind of technologies come in. But now in the metaverse, you're going to need assets. So for example, right now I'm in my home and this wall behind me has a wallpaper. Now, when I make a home for myself in the metaverse, I'm going to need a wallpaper there also. How do I take a wallpaper into the metaverse? I can't take an image there. It's a different technology. So a wallpaper is created as an NFT, a non-fungible token on a blockchain. And technologically, that is what connects to the metaverse. And then I can wear clothes. So Nike has launched virtual sneakers. Gucci is making virtual handbags, which you can carry as NFTs into the metaverse. So that's where the two of them start to meet.
Okay, so it's at the NFT level that blockchains connect with the metaverse.
As well as you, now suppose you need money in the metaverse. How are you going to go and buy things? So say you're walking around in the metaverse and you see a beautiful car. You want to buy it. The car is an NFT, but you will pay crypto to buy it. So that's where then crypto and blockchain kind of plugs in.
Okay.
In fact, very soon I'm going to be delivering my first lecture in the metaverse, where the students can also be part of the metaverse. So I'll invite all of you to join that session.
Yeah, it's going to be with Asian School, okay? I'm just saying.
Absolutely.
Okay. Awesome. So now what I would also want to ask is for everyone, if you have questions about blockchain as well as the law, you can, I'm leaving the floor open. The chat is there. You can just post your questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and you can just ask your questions. Would that...
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, Rohas. So my question is that recently in Meta, the metaverse for the Facebook, there was an incident where a lady was sexually assaulted by an individual in the metaverse.
Oh.
For which, So the Meta gave an explanation that they have created a bubble to defend an individual if they are not interested in interacting with others.
Okay.
So what will be the laws for this in upcoming metaverse?
Excellent
would you like to explain it?
Sure. So in my opinion, the current Information Technology Act and Indian Penal Code would be able to handle these offenses. So let's take an example that a woman is today harassed on, let's say, a social media platform. In normal Facebook, someone harasses her. That is the same in the eyes of the law as if her digital version is being harassed by someone in the metaverse. Similarly, if if you look at the Indian Penal Code, for example, one of the sections says whoever by words spoken or written outrages the modesty of a woman. So the same thing would apply to the metaverse also, because the Information Technology Act tries to bring the digital and physical worlds also on a similar platform when it comes to legal treatment. So you could end up committing that crime in digital world as well as in physical world, and the law would more or less be the same. So I would say that these kind of incidents, of course, one point is there that the word sexual assault in the real world has a very different connotation.
Yeah.
So when you do that to an avatar, today it will not come under the same definition, because that would need an element of physical assault. But things like eve teasing, bullying, a lot of other things would apply even if it is done in the metaverse. But that's an excellent question. And that's a whole area in which now a lot of people are going to need to start thinking that do we make minor changes in the existing law? Like when the cyber crimes came in, a lot of sections of the Indian Penal Code were very slightly modified to include the digital version of that crime. But with metaverse coming in and everything getting a very realistic feel, maybe we need a new set of laws which are going to change. Like, what if somebody takes over your land in the metaverse? So you've spent money, bought a piece of land and built a house. Now somebody comes and enters your house and starts living inside. Now, if that happens in the real world, we have a bunch of property laws to take care, Indian Penal Code to take care. What happens in the metaverse? So those are the issues that we still don't have answers to. But Harshvardhan, that's a nice question.
Yeah, Harshvardhan, the bubble actually reminds me of what is it? Not the season desist order, where you're restricted from coming within so much distance of a certain person, and it sort of reminds me of that kind of
restraining order.
Exactly.
Restraining order.
So it prevents for a person to interact with each other and everything.
Yeah, so like a restraining order kind of a thing. It reminds me of something like that.
So in fact,
thank
Shuchi,
you so much, Rohas, for explaining.
Most welcome. In fact, I remember when Shuchi first tried out the metaverse, I think you were hit on by someone and it was kind of like eve teasing, right? That was your first.
It was a little cheap. I mean, like some of the comments were not nice at all.
Yeah, so that's a very big issue, which is why I recommend women who are trying out the metaverse, keep a male avatar. So at least people don't harass you to begin with. I know it's a very sad thing, but then unfortunately, when it comes to digital, a lot of people feel that, they can say anything and get away with it. Because they're not physically there, so they're not scared. They feel they are anonymous. So especially for women, yeah, it's become quite a pain already. I can see that.
Maybe the safety aspect, Rohas, but I must say that then you don't really identify with your avatar at all. I mean, it's like an alien thing that you're using. You don't feel like you are your avatar and representing yourself.
I totally agree with you. Maybe what Facebook should probably start doing and other metas should do is that you get to choose who interacts with you. Other people should absolutely be forbidden from interacting with you. They can see you maybe at a distance, but they can't speak to you till you accept them into your circle. I guess they'll start doing all that soon.
Yeah, something like that. Because that's how, I mean, even otherwise, if you realize, that's how we form friendships.
Yeah, true.
We choose the people we wish to interact with. So that kind of choice will eventually have to be, and I guess somewhere the laws will also have to be, modified to accommodate for something like this.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? This was awesome, Harshvardhan. Very nice question.
So my other question was that like other companies like Facebook are making their own metaverses. So do you think there will be a centralized law of international laws for every metaverse existing? Like or the companies will have to follow the particular laws for their country itself?
So that's a good question. Now, if you look at the social media platforms, they're primarily governed by the country of incorporation. And then, of course, they need to also then start following laws in other countries. So, for example, when social media first started off, let's say when Facebook became really big, initially they only followed American law. But then today they've realized in each country that they have large presence. They are now expected to comply with local laws also. Now, I would consider from a tech point of view, I would say Metaverse is just another social platform. Yeah. It's just that it's a 3-dimensional platform as compared to 2-dimensional. So I think it would be the same way. the way that, in your core country of incorporation, as well as in countries that you have a presence, you would need to start complying with their laws. And to begin with, all the countries which already have social media laws, the same would automatically apply to the metaverse. Now, many different companies are making the metaverse. I mean, each of them is building their own platform. Maybe in future, they may have a way to connect, which today doesn't exist, by the way. Today, a Facebook account is not really being linked to a, say, Gmail account or a LinkedIn account, because they are owned by different companies. Correct. So even metaverses may not get linked unless the companies feel there is an economic benefit. Then they may all connect each other, and you may actually have a passport. Just like from one country to another, when you move, you need a passport. You may need a digital passport to move from the Facebook metaverse to the Google metaverse. Maybe that's how it will develop.
That's fascinating, absolutely.
Well, I would say, look at the movie Avatar, Matrix, Inception. Well, that's where the world is heading. Now, that is no longer science fiction. That's becoming reality. And I'm personally very bullish on the technology. I really find the concept really cool. Imagine I can sit in my home, wear these goggles, and I can explore Saturn, or I can explore the sun, or I can explore countries. I can go in for these kind of African safaris without actually having to go there. So I think it's really cool. I think Muskan has a question.
Yeah.
As a law student, how can we take advantage and build our career? Yeah. So what I would recommend as a law student to you is, you are actually at the very right time in the right place. So if you start to understand these various new areas that are emerging, so we are doing an entire series. So I think last time we did NFTs, this time blockchain, then next time we're going to do a separate edition on Metaverse. Now there are about 10 to 12 different new areas of law which are coming, and you need to understand all of them, because none of these are going to run independently. So for example, let's say you are working for a Metaverse company, right? You would need to understand blockchain, crypto, NFTs, Metaverse, and a few other concepts. So that entire area you need to be comfortable with. And this is where now companies are going to need really smart next-gen lawyers who would understand these latest aspects. And honestly speaking, it's tougher for the older guys to do this. I mean, I'm an old guy myself, but I work in the industry, so I don't have a choice. But it is becoming more and more difficult for older people to understand these new concepts. So what I would recommend, step one, start using these technologies. So open up an account with one of the metaverses, start looking at what NFTs are, spend a little bit of money, $100, $200 once in a while on buying some crypto, get comfortable with how it works. Then you will, once you are a user, it'll be easier for you to apply the law. So learn the practicalities first, and then you can always apply the law to it.
Thank you so much, sir. Actually, what I feel, once I'll use, then only I'll be able to find the loopholes.
Yes, you should start using.
Be able to improve on that.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, sir.
Most welcome.
Loopholes bit scares me a little bit, yeah. But absolutely, you're very right, Muskan. Unless we are comfortable with these technologies, we're not never going to understand how the law needs to change with them. Yeah.
Harshvardhan has mentioned about Ready Player One. Yes, I've heard of this movie. I've not seen it. I'll have a look at it. But yes, you can watch that. I've heard that that's also completely about the metaverse.
About the metaverse. All right. So we're going to end this session here. Even if you've not been able to ask your question, please do put your questions in the comments to these videos. You can do it either on Facebook or on YouTube. The video will be available in both places. And we'll definitely get back to you in the comments itself with the answers.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Rohas. Thank you so very much.
Most welcome.
We're going to be doing another session like this very soon. Please keep yourself updated on the ASCL, Asian School of Cyber Law's Telegram group. That's where we update every session.
Bye.
Yeah. All right. Bye.